Okay, we are recording. I'm just going to take a sip. Okay, so today's masterclass is on the 5 Magdalena wounds of the feminine. And we could easily insert the divine feminine in there. The reason I haven't is because they are the wounds of the divine feminine that we come in with at soul level. So they enter this life with us. But they are also very present in the physical, in this experience, because that's how they're shown to us repeatedly over and over again until we decide to listen and take note. The challenge of this class and this concept is that we're kind of asked to witness and observe the fact that some things that may feel like they have happened to us and are very, and that we have survived, that we have have a relationship to these stories, an emotional attachment to the stories of events and things that have happened to us. The challenge of this concept is that we actually learn that we have instigated this at a soul level. Now, as I say, that is a challenge. I'm going to share some very private and personal things that have happened to me and my traumatic events in this class. So believe me when I know that we all have very strong emotional attachments to a lot of things that have happened to us that relate directly to these Magdalena wounds. So that's the first thing I would say. It is a challenge to kind of accept that the horse came before the cart. The cart came before the horse, or something like that. It is a challenge to get our head around, but just try and stay with it, because this is a really gentle teaching, and this is directly from the divine feminine energy, the goddess energy. Okay, so thank you, Justin. We just want to clear that up. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, some of you are previous clients, some of you are people who know me personally. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Francesca O'Hare, and I'm an energy medicine practitioner, and I'm a teacher of energy medicine also. I trained originally in the chakra system, in the Vedic medicines, and then I found what felt more aligned to me, which was the Irish medicine. I'm of Irish heritage, Irish Italian heritage. So I found the Irish medicine, and our energy system, our equivalent of the chakras, is the 3 cauldron system. So we have the cauldron of warming sitting in the belly and the pelvic bowl. We have the cauldron of motion here in the chest cavity and the heart space. And we have the cauldron of wisdom, which sits in the head. Now, I'm not going to go into the full system of this, but I'm telling you because throughout this, I'm going to refer to both the chakras and the cauldrons, because that's my vernacular. Okay, so I will often reference the cauldrons or where these wounds sit within the cauldron. I'm also telling you because it was really when I heard this vernacular from Sandy Humby. Now, Sandy Humby is she runs an organization called the Rose Alchemy. I think it's Academy. If you Google her name and Rose Alchemy, you will be directed to her site. She does some incredible courses about rose medicine. If any of you have ever been for a treatment with me, you will have had the rose medicine cards from Sandy Humby placed upon you in a healing session. She's extremely proficient in rose alchemy and rose medicine. And rose symbology and medicine is at the heart of the 3 cauldron system also. Now, one thing I will say, caveat about the 3 cauldron system, there's very little ancient writings about this. And so those of us who work with it, we essentially have to channel our own usage of it, and we have to channel our own interpretation of it, I would say. So anything that I say, caveat, I have channeled this information in terms of the 3 cauldrons. But as the more that I've worked with it and taught it, what I'm getting fed back to me through the ethers and through client information and client feedback, it absolutely resonates with most people that use it, or everyone that I've ever used it with, to be honest with you. Okay. So in the 3 cauldron system, we have the rose symbology at the crown. So I'm going to keep referring to crown, the different chakra systems, because I want, I know that people who are in this class work heavily with the chakra system, and that's going to make more sense to you. So we have the cosmic rose at the crown, which is our crown chakra. And it's the place that we, as in the chakra system, it's the place that we go through in order to reach that higher cosmic wisdom and channel it back down into our cauldrons or into our body. The difference between the chakra system and this cauldron system is the cauldron system is very much, it's a bodily system. It's somatic. We literally stack the cauldrons. We utilize the alignment of those cauldrons physically, emotionally, and energetically in order to gain the most out of our own system. It's also true that the 3 cauldron system is our internal version of an outside experience. So, for example, your cauldron of warming is your inside version of your outer relationship with the earth. Your cauldron of wisdom is your internal experience of the outside relationship that you have with the world and manifestation and actual feedback from the world in terms of relationship and your experience. So just to give you that kind of insight, this isn't all going to be about the cauldrons. This is definitely about the Magdalena wounds. And I am conscious of time. I'm going to try and keep this down to between an hour and a half. It's I could talk forever on it, but I'm going to limit myself. Okay, so this is where Sandy Humby, I was listening to a podcast between Sandy Humby and the astrologer Pam Gregory, and I heard Sandy Humby name these 5 Magdalena wounds, and it instantly resonated with me, like instantly resonated. And she spoke about the wounds and the salves, and I'm going to cover that in this class. Each wound has a salve. Each wound sits in a different part of the body. I immediately started bringing it into my client sessions and found this absolute medicine. I have to say I work mainly with women, but men have a divine feminine attribute and side also. But don't forget, when I'm talking about feminine, we are including the males in this, or people who don't identify as a woman, because we all have an inner masculine and an inner feminine. So these wounds can absolutely be present in men. And as you go through this, you will probably recognize this in some of the men that you know. So let's get back to, so I immediately heard it. I resonated with it, and I could place them where they were in the cauldron system, and it unlocked a new level of medicine that I experienced with my clients and with myself. I'm going to go into my own journey with this in some detail later on. Okay, so I'm going to, for anyone, again, who's ever had a treatment or a session with me online, this book always comes out to play. I always open a page of this before I meet with a client to find out what source of goddess energy, what facet of the diamond of the goddess, because the goddess energy, I channel something called Imbas Forosne, and it also is known as the Shekinah. It's the highest level of the goddess energy, but she shows up in all these different faces. So I always open a page of this before I meet with a client and just throughout my day, to be honest with you, to find out what facet of the goddess is showing up in this situation. Now, what I opened this book before this, and I'm just going to read that what came up was Sophia. And I'm going to read this very short passage because it really does speak into what this is about with the Magdalena wounds. Silent but not forgotten. Wisdom lies hidden, residing in all things. So fear waits in our personal experiences, playful and painful, poignant and joyful. And she waits in our dreams. She sits at the door, calling her children into her temple of serendipitous strolls, poetic visions, creative musings, spontaneous laughter, and the fiery pleasures of love. In metaphor and metaform, she mediates from our woman souls. Yes, the goddess of wisdom is the ultimate arouser to those who return her love with heartfelt reverence. The hearth is kept warm. Listen to her voice, the one that whispers from within. What was relevant yesterday may not suffice today. Paradoxically, the past will reveal the precise information you are seeking. Sophianic solutions will arise. Nothing can delay wisdom's return. Once invoked, she will lead you to your true destiny. Now, those words are basically what the Magdalena medicine is about. The wound medicine is about these deep experiences that we have had through our life are pointing us to the Magdalena wounds that are affecting us. And within those wounds is our medicine. It's our greatest gift, but it shows up as our greatest wound. Okay, so from there, I'm going to move on and let's have a look at these Magdalena wounds and where they sit in the body. Okay, so we have 5 wounds, 5 places in the body. What I would advise to you as a practice, this is a teaching class, so that I'm not going to do specific practices within this class. What I would suggest to you as a practice, when you want to work with these in your own time, go into a meditative state, do whatever it is you need to do, breathe, hold something, go do a tape that a video that you do, and go get yourself as calm and relaxed and in the moment and present as possible. And I would recommend laying hands on the body because we want to be in the body as much as we can, which is quite a difficult place for some of us to be. And what I would suggest is you speak aloud these words: separation, judgment, denial, betrayal, and abandonment. And when you speak these words, I want you to feel where they resonate in your body. Because absolutely, yes, there is an area that is named as their area. But I want you to feel where they are for you. Because what that's going to tell you is it's like they're connected, they're interconnected. A bit like your root chakra and your crown chakra are related, your throat and your sacral are related. It's the same for these wounds. So don't worry or judge yourself if they don't show up for you in the areas that I'm going to tell you, because there is medicine in this for you. So for example, if you have denial, which is at the throat, if you're feeling that in your stomach, there is something wrong with the connection between not something wrong. There is something to learn in the connection between the throat and the stomach. Let's say it like that. Okay. So, separation is held at the crown or the cosmic rose in my vernacular. Judgment is held at the third eye or the cauldron of wisdom in my vernacular. Denial is held within the throat. In my vernacular again, just to keep being repetitive, it's the chalice. The chalice. Betrayal is held at the solar plexus, the inner sun, in my medicine. And abandonment is held in the root and the sacral. And again, that is the cauldron of warming, the lower cauldron for me when I'm talking about it. So just to reiterate that again, we have separation here at the crown, just above the head or just at the top of the head. We have judgment in this area, the third eye. We have denial at the throat, betrayal at our solar plexus just below the rib cage, and abandonment in the belly. Okay. So these wounds, as I've stated already, they are wounds that we have come in with. So these wounds are past life wounds, past experiences. So some of the things that play out in this lifetime may not necessarily make sense to us because we may not have an experience of this wounding that feels relevant to us in an early childhood, for example, or through our life, because it's coming in from beyond that. So the way this shows up is in our experience. It's experiential more than, I would say, a feeling of this wound. And again, when I go into, I'm going to talk about two of my wounds. I actually feel, Sandy Humby says, all feminine, so all men's feminine side and all women come in with at least one of these wounds. I would say we can relate to more than one. Generally, from my experience with clients, my experience with myself, is that we are, the more, and I'm saying that because the more likely you are to be on something like this, whether you are in a replay or whether you are here right now, the more likely you are to be exploring this type of medicine or this side of esoteric life, the more wounding of this sort, I would say, you are carrying. Now remember, we're talking about wounding, but this is our gift. So these are actually our gifts. And it's the magic of this medicine is that by processing the wounds, accepting the wounds is a big thing. We are tapping into actually what we've come here to do, the medicine we have come to be in the world. The feminine energy is medicine. The feminine energy is here to love unconditionally, to heal, to create. And, life experience and just being human means that we're not in that energy all the time. Are we hell in that energy all the time? We can't be. But that is divinity. That is divine femininity. And if we want to channel that at all, we have to address the wounds of the divine feminine, the wounds of the feminine. And the reason they're called the Magdalena wounds as well is, think about this, Mary Magdalene. We understand her now. Look how she was vilified. She was vilified throughout patriarchal history, made made virtually insignificant within the teachings, when in reality she was the other half of that energy, that Christ consciousness energy. She was the feminine half of that in physical form. And Jesus himself was the ultimate holder of feminine energy. He was the ultimate healer. So Magdalene herself is the epitome of the wounding of the feminine, the writing out of the magic that we've seen through the witch trials, we've seen through all kinds of historical events. But her medicine, the rose medicine, has continued to be sown secretly through the generations and through history. And now it's making this huge reemergence because we're ready. And that gives us a great start because it's here, it's in this present time. We have access to this, but we've got to do our own work. we've got to be prepared to look inwards. We've got to be brave. You know, divine feminine energy is not princess energy. She's a warrior. And we've got to be brave. And that starts with us. That starts with looking inward. What's my wounding? How has that played out into the world? And how can I move forward, tapping into that wounding as my medicine rather than lived experience of trauma and pain? Okay. So I can't, within an hour and a half, go through every single wound in depth. I will speak into different wounds. I will speak a bit into different wounds, but I'm going to concentrate on 2 wounds specifically to go into much more depth because they are my 2 major wounds. So I can give you the empirical evidence of how this shows up. I can tell you what this looks like as a story. And the 2 I'm going to choose are judgment and abandonment. And the reason I'm going to talk about abandonment is because my experience and intuition around this medicine is this is the collective female wound. This is the one that most people are experiencing. And if we're not experiencing it individually, we are as a collective here to tune into this. So I want you to walk away from this masterclass with a really good knowledge of abandonment and how this can use, because I know a lot of you work with clients and I want you to be able to recognize this. I want you to be able to recognize the stories around it. And I want you to be able to help yourself and others, because that's my mission here, I think, on this planet, is to teach as much of this as I possibly can, and get these messages as wide as I possibly can. Okay, so I'm going to start with judgment. Okay, give me a moment. Just to assure everyone as well, I have very much protected this session. So these are big subjects. This is big channeling. Okay, so judgment. I'm going to take these off actually while I'm channeling more. Judgment sits in the 3rd eye. Now, I have always had terrible vision from being about 9 years old, which again is not a coincidence. 9 years old, my vision went, and 9 is the geometric pattern of the rose, not 333. Okay, so judgment physically comes through as issues with vision, issues with the eyes. It also comes through as issues with anger. Eyes are related to the liver, and gallbladder issues. So it can come with an inability to flush out, let's say, toxins. Okay. Now, this is my story with judgment, so that you can see how it's an example of what goes on here and how this can show up. So I was born into a really judgmental family. I was born into a family who are of Irish and Italian descent. So we've got Irish on both sides. Then I've got Irish grandfather on my dad's side and Italian grandmother on my dad's side. And so I come in with the 2 sides of judgment. I come into the experience of 2 sides of judgment, because I don't know how much anyone knows about what was made of the Irish, especially in the generations that my grandfather came into. The Irish were absolutely, judgment is a very weak word to use for what happened to the Irish. You know, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, the signs that were in the windows: no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, with Irish being very much at the bottom of that list. So they were judged. They were feared. Judgment is fear, don't forget, as well. So they were feared. And I'm talking about this again because look at the situation we are in currently in the world with how immigrants and emigrants are treated. So emigrants are people who move for financial reason. They need to leave their own country for financial reason to go and seek work and life in another country. So my lineage is from emigrant people who come to the UK for financial reasons. All from the countryside, all from the mountains, if that makes any difference. The Italian side, so I've got I've got being judged. The Italian side, don't know whether you know any Italians, but we're extremely judgmental, particularly about looks. Okay. An Italian will look you from head to toe when they first meet you. Okay. And I say this with love because I love all of my Italian side. I love the Italian in me. But they're very, very judgmental people. As I say, it's very specifically around looks. Okay. So I'm born into this situation of people who have been judged and who are heavily judged and holding the wounds of that, and people who are judgy and hold the wounds of that, because that is not liked. You know, it's not a trait in people that people find attractive or want to stay around, is when someone's judgmental. And I know, because I'm really judgmental myself. I have that in me. So I've got this. I'm born. I've got the wound that I'm coming with. I'm coming in with judgment, and I'm going to land in the family that show me the two sides of judgment. So I'm in it, and that's my familial experience. And what happens is I'm a really, really chubby kid, and I'm in a chubby kid in a family of really beautiful people. And I'm a really chubby kid with a father who has a real problem with fat people from his Italian judgmental, and because he was an absolute health freak. He was very, very fit. He was very, very healthy, because when he was young, he was very unfit, and he had a massive heart attack at 33 years old. So he became very fit and very thin. By the time I come along in his late 30s, he loved me intensely. But he was not a happy bunny that I had this weight. So I felt extremely judged. I learned very quickly to judge myself, particularly for my body size and my body shape. And like I say, it starts to show in my eyes. Another thing where this comes in, judgment clouds your vision, literally and figuratively. So my actual vision becomes clouded. But also, when I was very young, I used to see things. I used to see ghosts, or I used to see visions of different things. And obviously that, I shared that. And luckily, my father, who was not very understanding about my weight, was very understanding about that, because it was in the family. And he was very clear that all I needed to do was tell these entities or visions that I didn't want to see them, that I wasn't okay with it, that I didn't enjoy it, and I was able to stop that. Because there was a fear, because I was a little girl and I didn't want to see things at night. I didn't want to see things in my room. So I then cut off that clairvoyance, that ability to see other. So can you see, we're here, we're still, you see how detailed this is? And I'm just going to carry on because it's story time. You know, this is just absorb this as a story. So it's showing up in my eyes, literally. It's showing up in the fact that I now have managed to cut myself off from seeing it. Because another thing that was made clear to me in this discussion about, I was never shamed for seeing things, but I was conscious, probably more from my mother, so my feminine influence, that you didn't talk about stuff like that. So again, that becomes, right, okay, so this is something you keep to yourself. As I'm growing up, I know that I'm judging myself for how I look heavily. I'm very, very hard on myself, but I'm also really hard on other people. I was very, very hard on other people as a young girl, teenager. I was very, this is right and this is wrong. I was, and I was a fighter for the cause. I was fighting always for the underdog, and I was very politically minded, and I was very, politically active as a really young person in discussion and in other ways. But it was very judgmental. This is right, this is wrong. There's no space for this. There's all the space in the world for this. And it was very cut and dry. Everything was very black and white for me. So again, that is it, it's judgment. It's making these judgments over and over and over again. Okay. And as I'm older, I judge people. I still do it now. I do it now. That's part of who I am. But as for a long, long time, I would very much hide that. Very much. Because not consciously, just because obviously you've been told I knew what it was like to be judged by my family for how I looked, and for school. Yeah, I went to school in the 90s. Everyone was tiny. I was a big girl, so I was judged in by my peers. I was judged by my family. I was judgy. You see how this works? Okay, so you hide it because very often these wounds are not desirable, and we get that feedback loop very, very quickly in our life. I want to talk a little bit into denial at the throat. So we all know these people who, if their mouth's moving, we know they're lying. We have those people in our lives. But it also can be much more subtle. If we've struggled to tell the truth because we're worried about the impact on the other person, or we're worried that we're going to look bad, or we're worried that we've had the feedback loop that either truth is not okay. You've said this out loud and you've been told off for saying that in public by the parents, or you've been told off in school for giving a contrary opinion to that which is being taught, or the opposite, if you've been constantly told off for not telling the truth and lying. We get this feedback loop that there is something that, so on a survival basis, if we want to survive in this life, we're going to have to zip it. And we're either going to have to fabricate untruths to survive, or we're going to have to keep our truth in to survive. And this is what happens. It's the feedback loop. The wound is intentional for the soul. It's come in with it. But the feedback loop we get in living with this wound is that, oh, this is not okay. It's not okay to have this wound. It's not okay to have this trait, this behavior, etc. Okay. Why this is one of my greatest gifts. Okay, I see things that other people don't see. And I'm not talking these days about entities, because that's still to a large degree is cut off. Although in client work and client sessions, or if I'm doing hands-on healing, I will have internal visions of systems that I'm working with on the person. But I'm talking about, I can see a truth in things. I can see a truth. I can feel a truth. It's also related to the ears. Okay, so the third eye, and this is almost related to what you hear as well. So I can hear things that other people don't hear. If I'm working with a client, for example, you're telling me what's wrong here, 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 and here, and I've got the pattern instantly. I can see it and I can hear it. And so in that way, and also in like a world stage, I can see and understand and process things in a different way. That's why I'm doing what I do. And that is so it's wounding, but it's one of my greatest gifts. And so now, as a person and as a woman, I can hold those two truths from this work, from working with the Magdalena wounds. I can hold those two truths with absolute authenticity. I was going to say pride, but it's not a pride. It's with authenticity. I don't have to say to you anymore, oh, I'm not judgmental. I think everyone's marvelous. Don't have to say that anymore, because I can tell you with all openness, I'm really judgmental, but I'm so aware of it. And I'm so, I'm so aware of it that I don't hold those judgments to be true about you now. I'm able to process it in an instant. Oh, I'm hearing that, I'm feeling that about her, but that's my projection maybe on this situation. I'm aware of myself. The person I was most judgmental about, as I've stated already, was myself. And I'm now much lighter with myself. And I can feel it. I can stop that loop and go, oh, why? Come on. If I ever, when I was young, I was a big partier. I'm really boring now, but I was a really big partier. Lots of drinks and lots of other things. If I went out and made a fool of myself, I literally couldn't cope the next day. And yet I could be out with any number of people doing any number of things, and I would never ever think any less of them for doing anything. But if I did it, it was as though I held myself to such an extreme standard, or outwardly, of what I would allow to be shown. So we are going to go into the wounds for the salve, for all of these wounds, but I'm just going to talk right now. The wound for judgment is forgiveness. Sorry, the salve for the wound of judgment is forgiveness. So with forgiveness, I was able to, now notice that we're calling it a salve, and this is Sally Humby's words. Notice we're calling it a salve. We're not calling it a cure. We're not talking about healing these wounds. And that's really important to kind of understand, because we're not necessarily, I think we can get very stuck in, once I've healed, this is going to happen. And once I've healed, I'm going to be this person. And once I've healed, what we're talking about here is acceptance, radical acceptance of this wound within you and the things that it has caused. And a realization that both of these situations can be held. The wound can be held in acceptance without the need to be healed, but we can salve it. We can give some comfort to it. Salve is about comfort. And we can see the magic, the gift within it. Okay, so the salve for judgment is forgiveness. And it instantly salves and soothes judgment. If you forgive, if I find myself in a state of judgment about myself and what I've done, and I bring forgiveness in, instantly, okay, I can see how same with other people. If I'm in a situation of holding that other person in judgment, and then I bring forgiveness in, again, dissipates the intensity. I might still think the same thing, but it dissipates that intensity. It removes this terrible thing that we hold all the time, which is blame and shame. Okay. So that is my story with judgment, and that is how it's played out for me. So we're going to move now on to abandonment, right? And abandonment is so present and prevalent in the feminine. One of the first things that got me personally as a practitioner into working with it was working with the cauldrons, but also it was a real notice moment, and it's led me into my specific areas of work. Okay. And one of my biggest missions is to get women back safely into their cauldron of warming, into the pelvic bowl area, into the belly. Because what I would notice on I'm not even going to say virtually, every client I've experienced laying my hands on. We do, even when I was working with the chakra system, you're laying your hands on, you're balancing chakras, you're doing what you're doing. And I would get to anywhere below my signal for when there's an issue with connection or an issue in the chakras. It was always a lack of warmth. I'm not going to call it coldness, but it was a lack of warmth that I could feel on my hands on that area. Every single person that I touched on the stomach, when it came to the sacral and root, everyone was cold. The feedback was cold. And that is a disassociation from an area, or a lack of attachment to an area. So there's a really big, I'm just going to turn a big light on because it's gone very, very dark in here thanks to the storm that's brewing outside. Okay, so this disassociation. So one of my major missions on this earth as I've come in is to get women safely back in there, because there's so much magic in there for women. There's so much magic, but it's a place of trauma, and that's the honest truth. It's a place of trauma for many, many, many women and men, and so this detachment has come to keep us safe. So it's this detachment has come to keep us safe, and to not have to go into that old wounding. And so when I began then working with the Magdalena wounds, this abandonment as one of the wounds became really important to address in order to begin that safe journey, or to not even to begin that safe journey. It was just an integral part of everything that was ever in that cauldron. I can't speak highly enough about what this wound of abandonment actually means in most people. My own wounding in this area, so this abandonment area, I'm going to talk into my own experience again, because number one, I'm never going to speak about a client, and number two, it's helpful to just hear it in the context of a story, I think, or in the context of words. So abandonment for me, I have zero abandonment issues out. I would say I have zero acute abandonment issues at all from my childhood. None. My mother was what I would say emotionally unavailable, and that is simply because I understand now as a woman and a mother. I understand now that was about busyness, occupied, mental load of a household, those kind of things. Her own experience of childhood, her own stuff. So I don't hold anything against her with that, but she was probably emotionally a bit distant. But I had no abandonment. Like, I had no one left that, there was none of that big parent leaving, or nothing happened that, I went to grew up in a very stable community of people, a very Catholic upbringing. So the community was everything. There was a big core group of people around me that were very safe and very secure. I lived in the same house my whole life. The family home was sold when my dad died in 2020. There's, everything. No one divorced. It was held. It was a very held kind of experience. No abandonment at all. And yet, my adult life was filled with injury and trauma to this area. And my earliest relationship in terms of love relationship, romantic relationship, I was extremely paranoid that I was going to be left. And again, there was no need for that. There was no experience of that. I was with the same person for 7 years, but I was it wasn't a jealousy as such. It was this fear of it ending that overtook most of the 7 years. So I had this thing, but I had no basis for it at all. And the way, as I've said, these things show up experientially and in physical form. So the way this showed up for me in my adult life was rape and sexual assault, was very traumatic birthing of my children, mainly my first child, birth injuries. So I had, until very, very recently, a dislocated coccyx from my first son's birth 10 years ago. So I had, for the first 2 years of his life, I had continual pain. And for the remaining 8 years, I had severe discomfort whenever sat down for a prolonged period of time. So I had a very, like, injuries, pain, injuries, all here. That's not the limit of what's happened, but and there was a lot of trauma in there, and the trauma came in before the birthing, which is why the birthing was so traumatic, because I was already detached from this area. So when it came to birthing, I wasn't able to be in that in a way that was going to mean that I could do it. I wasn't able to advocate for myself within a medical system at all. I was in Spain, so I wasn't birthing in my first language or anything like that. It was all really messy and very disjointed, because I was completely already, thanks to the rape and sexual trauma, I was already detached from that area. And none of the sexual trauma that I received, I have to say, was ever reported, was ever spoken about, because it was all from a time of my life where, as I've mentioned before, I was a heavy partier. I partied a lot. I drank a lot. I did other things. I did drugs. There was never an addiction to anything, but I was completely in that life for a number of years. And so I always felt that those things happened to me because it was just part of the life that I led. So I completely detached from any pain around that. I completely detached from any suffering around that. And I thought I walked on through my life just thinking, well, that's just one of the things that happen to you if you play with fire. And I'm sorry, like, this can be very triggering, I know, to hear, but this is my reality. This is my story. This is my lived experience. And I can't hold any shame around it anymore, because I've done the work. So it is what it is. It's spoken about. It's out there for me now. And the discomfort of others will show up, and you will have to, that's a thing to be dealt with by the listener, So I removed any feeling from any of this. So I'm telling you this because it's almost to say, like, these things happened, but I didn't walk around traumatized, so to speak, by any of this, because I was already numbed with alcohol and drugs. And the other thing was, I was in abandonment of myself in those years. So you can see how there's no straight line with any of this. It's playing out, it's playing to you, and it's playing outwards from you all the time. There's no this, then this, then this, then this. It's an all-encompassing idea. It's an all-encompassing wounding. So this abandonment of self starts a process of me getting injured and traumatized in this area. And this further abandonment of self makes me shame that trauma and push it down, and makes me pull away from it and further self-medicate, let's call it. So it's an ever-increasing detachment from this area. I move on with my life. I move through my life thinking I'm okay. I'm not really affected. I move on from that lifestyle. I start a very different existence of spiritual life and, all this kind of thing. I go to have a child. I'm fully versed in, it's going to be a totally natural birth and it's going to be all this stuff. And all that life is behind me now. And it shows up. It shows up because no matter what I was doing, I was reading spiritual midwifery books. I was doing all the stuff. I was laying the crystals on. All the things were happening. It came to the event, but I was not able to go in and be there in that cauldron because the wounding, the previous abandonment, the detachment from there. So another way it then goes on to show up. So that's physical problems with this area, physical issue, things of abandonment. Another way it goes to show up, I mentioned earlier about the boyfriend. Now, I always, no matter how much headwise I feared them leaving, I always pushed away. Everyone pushed them away. So I'm enforcing this. I am enforcing this idea of abandonment. I am making this happen. And this was a pattern that went on with boyfriends that I had all the way through. The father of my children. Now there was a big issue there. It's not something that we should have been in at all, but it happened, and we made two amazing children. But there was always this push. There was always this push, and I'm now in a co-parenting situation, and co-parenting is one huge symptom of abandonment, and it's where your abandonment wound plays out beautifully, as far as I'm concerned, because it's such a perfect image of it. But it's a hard thing to go through, and I'm talking from experience. Now, co-parenting might be in the same house within a marriage. You're co-parenting. How much discord and how much discomfort is there around your co-parenting journey? Do you seamlessly decide what you want to do with the kids? Do you seamlessly share the workload? Or is it a bone of contention all the time? If it's a bone of contention all the time, this is abandonment playing out. And it's abandonment of self. Abandonment of self in terms of you're always putting yourself at the bottom of the list and you're really resenting everyone around you because you're knackered, because you're putting yourself at the bottom of the list. You're abandoning your needs for the needs of others. There's no prizes for that, by the way. There's no prizes for being knackered, or who can be the most neglected parent in the playground. I'm saying this from love because I've been the most neglected parent in the playground and I've turned that stuff around because I've had to. And everyone's doing better for it. So it's co-parenting is a major symbol and symptom of abandonment wounds. You might not be a co-parent with somebody. You might just be in a relationship with them, or it might be your relationship with the masculine in general. How much have you come up against issues with the masculine? We're all watching the manosphere at the moment, and it's very hype. It's a hype issue at the moment. But in all seriousness, this issue with patriarchy, this physical or this violent, and I don't mean physical violence, but this violent interaction between men and women is abandonment playing out in the world. Their abandonment, their detachment from the feminine side of themselves that feels abandoned, and the female abandonment of self and the wound of abandonment. It's playing out. So if you've had endless issues with male co-workers or male bosses, it's time to have a look at abandonment. Okay. Anywhere else that I'm feeling to talk into abandonment? it has relationship with, and I'm saying it has relationship with some addictions, particularly food addictions, I would say, or unhealthy relationship with food. But addiction also lives in the betrayal wound, which is at the solar plexus. So there is some stuff of abandonment, of abandoning again. But again, nothing about this is linear. It's not, this is your wound and this is, this is what you're gonna have, and you've got no others, or this is not exclusive and it doesn't work within others. There is a mingling of this. So you could have betrayal and abandonment going on, and that is causing an addiction to something. Okay. It also plays out in a real issue with not knowing what your desires are. Now, this can very much be about sexual desire, but it isn't all about sexual desire. If you cannot easily answer the question, what is it that you want? Even if it's just right now, what would you like right now? Is it a bath? Is it a lie down? Do you want to go for a run? What is it like? Do you want to, like, if you have a real issue, and please don't feel ashamed of that at all, because every woman I know has an issue at some stage with this. If you have a real issue with the question, what do you want? What do you desire? If there is an issue with you even knowing it, or if there's an issue with you thinking you deserve it, we're looking at abandonment. This is where we need to be working. So you can see abandonment's huge, and I'm sure you're recognizing more than one part of this story as your own. Now, I promised you gifts, didn't I? And my main gift is that I can ground people around me. I can mother people around me. I can offer the anchor to somebody who is self-abandoning. I can offer that unconditional love. And also, I'm here. I'm here to work with this area with people. This is what I'm here to do. I'm here to bring people back safely into this lower cauldron. So you can see that all that stuff that I've spoken about before, all that stuff that feels, you can feel it as a negative experience, or negative experiences, or trauma. They are they have brought me into my greatest gift, the gift of bringing women back into this center. Okay, so our salve for abandonment. So abandonment is such a big deal that abandonment has more than one salve, and the salve it's the self-love, self-worth, self-actualization, self-care, anything that you can put selfish. How many people have a negative association with the word selfish? Hands up. Me. I'm sure you. Selfishness. We've been told that it is akin to murder. Like, if somebody is selfish, you would describe them as selfish, but it's a helpful salve for abandonment. I want to see more selfishness in the world, because I tell you what happens when you're selfish and you look after your own interests first, and you look after your own needs first, particularly physical, emotional, or energetic needs. When you look after those things first, everyone else around you benefits. The world around you benefits. Life transforms in terms of what comes back at you. Okay, so we're at an hour. Thank you for still being here. I won't be going on for too much longer. And as I say, if it's anything that comes that drops out, anyone that drops out, if you would, you will get the replay. So here we are now. We're with the medicine, with the salves of all of these wounds. And as I've mentioned, and I repeat things, but I repeat things because I feel that they're important, or I feel that they're important. As I've mentioned, we're not talking about curing anything. There's nothing to be cured. You are whole. Your clients are whole. We're talking about comfort. We're talking about easing symptoms. We're talking about allowing a level of acceptance so that we can live with the wound, and that we can hold the wound with some grace and with some love. So let's have a look at the salves. For the wound of separation, we have unity. So separation, again, separation is a big female wound. It's a huge female wound, and it comes very much with abandonment. They are very interlinked. Separation shows up for us in separateness, emotionally, physically. It's this idea that we are somehow alone. I know lots of us have felt very, very alone in our life. It's the sensation that things or people are out of our reach. It's the sensation that we can be abandoned. So abandonment as a person of somebody leaving is actually more to do with separation. Okay, it's not the abandonment. Abandonment is usually due to separation. So if somebody actually, when we feel physical distance as an issue, unity is, if we think about how separation is playing out in the world right now. You're this political party, I'm this political party, I'm left wing, you're right wing, you're black, I'm white, you're this, you're that. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And unity is the salve. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that anymore because I already know from preparing this and from the feedback of people who wanted to come on this, I already know that this will end up being a longer course that I will upload onto my platform, where I go into every single wound in the same depth that I have with the others. But it's just not feasible in a kind of masterclass. Okay. But what I will say is, as I say, it's this idea of unity, this idea if we can bring in even the word unity, think about how different that looks and feels than what we are experiencing now in separation in terms of the world. Think of how that looks if we, instead of seeing ourselves separately, if we accept the unity of that we have with every other being on the planet. How different do we then treat those other beings? If we see ourselves in other, how differently does the world look? Okay, so separation, the salve is unity. Judgment, as I've mentioned, the salve is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the key. The wound of denial, the salve is truth. Now that sounds really obvious, but if you think about it, how easy, feel it more than think, feel it. How easy is it for you to tell the truth all the time? How many white lies do we tell throughout the day? Thousands. Oh yeah, I really liked that tea. Oh yeah, your wallpaper's lovely. We're doing it supposedly for the other person. You know, we're doing it supposedly for the other person, but it's our inability to handle the consequence of truth. That's what denial is. And the truth, what's the saying? The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And never was a truer word spoken. And we all know this from these awakenings that we're having and the awakenings that the world is having. The truth is extremely painful at times. But denial is more wounding. Denial is the compacting of a wound, of a problem, of an issue, that it's like the pustulous sac that needs to explode, and that's what truth is. And so as a medicine, truth is not allowing anything to be hidden. It's not allowing anything to be hidden. But conditionally, but in our conditioning, it's very, 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 very hard to do. It's very hard for us to speak the truth constantly. It's very hard for us to try and do it for a day. It's nigh on impossible. So again, it's denial and truth. Down in betrayal at the solar plexus, we have the salve of trust. Again, sounds perfectly, logical, doesn't it? But it depends on how this betrayal is showing out. The more betrayal we feel and have felt in our life, the smaller trust gets. Incrementally less and less trust in the world, in people, in parents, in relationships, all of those things. Seems totally logical, doesn't it? But, and this is why this medicine is like, it's a big spirals and figure of eights and all the other things. It's not a linear process. The less we trust, the more betrayal will find us. And actually, your soul knows the truth of those words. The less, and that's not just in, we quite often as women, we feel into this as a relationship thing, or little relationships between people we know very well. Think about that in terms of the bigger picture. How much trust are we seeing in anything right now? Nothing. Because what we're seeing is betrayal after betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. And inwardly, betrayal is an issue. Think about where it is, solar plexus. So this is your core strength. This is your will. This is your ability to self-actualize anything. Your ability to be self-motivated. It's your ability to, what's the word I want to say? Your will, your sense of will and your sense of power over yourself. So again, trust. How much trust do we have in ourselves? How much trust do we have in our capacity to see through a project, or see through a diet, or whatever it is you want to do? You're not trusting ourselves, because what happened is we're betraying ourselves once again. So you can see how these things really fit together. Again, there's miles of depth to every single wound, but I don't have that time for you, and I know you don't have that time on a Saturday morning. It's not that I don't have that time for you. That's a terrible thing to say. I mean, we can't do a 3-hour-long masterclass about all this. It doesn't work like that. It would totally overload the system. So we have these beautiful salves, and I've spoken with abandonment, the self-love, the self-worth, the self-care. Now, self-love is a very on-trend phrase, isn't it? Self-care, and we have images of bubble baths and saunas and going to a jacuzzi with your friends, and all of that's beautiful, and I would recommend every single bit of it. But sometimes self-care looks like sorting out your finances. It looks like ringing the person that you really don't want to ring. It looks like doing the to-do list in order and not abandoning your needs in this present life existence. And that can sometimes, self-care, the best thing you can do for yourself is do something really, really, really practical. Really practical. And the feeling, we all know the feeling when we do something. And we all know that generally the thing that we put off and really don't want to do, in the end, turns out to be a lot easier than we thought. Okay, So they are ourselves. The gifts. So the gifts, again, when you're in your own time and your own practice with this, the first thing that comes to anyone when we feel into the Magdalena wounds is the trauma. Just going to be honest. It's the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, God, now I understand why this has happened and that's happened. And I understand why I've always had tonsillitis. And I understand why I've always, had this terrible neck pain. It's the denial. It's the denial. And I understand why I've really struggled to be able to tell somebody that and that's perfectly valid and perfectly relevant. And it's essential. It's an essential part of this. But please look and feel for the gifts, because the gifts of these wounds are what is going to tell you what you were here to do on this earth. We hear a lot about chironic wounds. So your chironic wounds, your wounds of chiron, chiron is a placement in your chart. It's a placement in your chart that tells you where in your astrological chart I'm talking about here, and where chiron is in your house, which house of the astrological chart it's in, will tell you what your greatest wound is in this experience, in this life. And it's also the gift that you come in with, because if you can address this chironic wound, you are really coming into the knowledge of what you came here to do. The wounded healer. Chiron is the wounded healer. Now, my absolute knowing in this is that the feminine in us, so either as we are presenting and living in a female body, or the feminine part within us, the feminine half of us, we are here to be medicine. We are here to be the healing for the world. So your wound, your Magdalena wounding, wherever it may be, if you've got something, you might have all five, and that's and amazing. Everything, you're here to be such a strong healer for the world. Your light is so required for the world that you were given all of the trials and tribulation, you gave yourself all the trials and the tribulation as a soul to come and experience, so that you could really understand the people that you're here to help, so that you really have an appreciation of the wounds that are playing out in this world, so that you can not only do you see it, but that you understand it and you can feel it. So every single wound that we've addressed in this class, every single wound is a gift, and your biggest gifts are within these areas. So as I said before, when you are in your practice with this, going into your meditative states, yes, 100%. Please observe the stories, and I use the word observe because it's slightly detached from experience, isn't it? So observe the stories, observe the areas where you may feel this, but also call in the knowledge of the gifts. Call in the knowledge of, wow, so I've experienced that. And so therefore I'm here to heal that. I'm here to be the light, the goddess nature around that wound that causes others going through that, even just by my very presence on the earth, even if I'm not actively working with clients, or I'm not actively working with anyone. Even just me being in this world in divine feminine with these wounds, radically accepting these wounds, I am here healing that for others. And what an absolute magical gift that is for yourself and for the world. Okay. Okay, so onwards from here. If you would like to work with me specifically on your wounds, you can arrange with me a 2-hour bespoke wound wisdom session. And it's going to be £77 for anyone who was on today and anyone who's asked me for the replay. There's a big list of people having the replay. So if you want to go specifically with me in a fully held session into where your wounds, your Magdalena wounds might be and how they have showed up and where they've been, that is available, and I would welcome you to do that with me. And it's called the Wound Wisdom Session because what we're going to get to is the gifts, okay, your specific gifts. And we're going to talk through all the stories surrounding that as well, so that you have that full picture of it. Another way you can come onwards with me is join the free school. Community School is a platform where I've already got courses up on there that are free that you can utilize about, just talking into the cauldrons, what the cauldrons are, and I'm adding to it week on week. This will be available. This recording is going to be available on there forever. And I'm going to send each of you and the people who have got on the email list, I'm going to send you the YouTube replay. So you'll be able to see that without joining the community. But it is an option for you to be in that community, just because it's going to be lots and lots of things coming up that you're just going to have access to all the time. And there's already stuff on there to work through. And my next free masterclass is on the 25th of April. It's again a Saturday. It's again 11 a.m. And this is going to be a masterclass on the wisdom of warming. So this is going to be a full immersion into the cauldron of wisdom, this lower cauldron, which is where we've spoken about a lot in this class in terms of the abandonment wound. This is going to be, if you felt something in that about abandonment, if you felt that word, if you felt from the stories that I was talking about, I would really recommend you come into this masterclass, because this is going to be the beginning of your medicine. If you felt anything very strongly in this at all, I want you to please get in touch with me. And if you feel that you could benefit from just a free recording of a meditation I do around the cauldron of wisdom, the cauldron of warming, this lower cauldron. If you feel like you could benefit from any of the free materials that I have, just get in touch and I will send you something that you can do to just bring light and presence into that area. But this masterclass on the 25th of April is going to be a real deep dive, because this, as I've mentioned in earlier on several times now, this is my work here. This is one of my main missions. It's to get women safely into this area of their own system, because it's the place that I just feel the detachment from in women all the time. As you've heard today, my own experience of detachment from this area. And I'm so fully present now in this area that I was able to very, very recently go on a past life journey and find the life that this abandonment wound in me came from. Because as I mentioned, I was never abandoned as a child. This was a 500-year ago lifetime. And the issue was from when I was 3 years old. So it was a really harrowing story, but it was me, and I was able to go in, and I have zero coccyx pain now. So a 10-year pain story has been solved. But I couldn't have done that without first getting very safely back into that area of my body. And the cauldron system has done that for me. So that's how you can go forward with me if you would choose to. I'm going to end the recording in a few moments, and anyone who would like to speak or share something that came up in that for them, if you would like my help right now in this moment, I'm happy to stay on, and I'm happy to hear any reflections on the course. You're all going to get your replay in the way you've chosen, the way that you've asked for it. And I really, really sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for turning up to, however you've come into this class, whether it's live or whether it's a replay. Thank you for coming in, because even just by listening to this information, this wisdom, which is not my wisdom, this is all channeled. Even by listening to this, you are beginning and part of a process of healing these wounds as a collective. So my heartfelt appreciation to you. And I'm going to end the recording now. Let me just make sure it ends.